I have learned to seek my happiness by limiting my desires, rather than in attempting to satisfy them. After the primary necessities of food and raiment, freedom is the first and strongest want of human nature. There are many truths of which the full meaning cannot be realized until personal experience has brought it home. No great improvements in the lot of mankind are possible until a great change takes place in the fundamental constitution of their modes of thought. Truth gains more even by the errors of one who, with due study and preparation, thinks for himself, than by the true opinions of those who only hold them because they do not suffer themselves to think. The despotism of custom is everywhere the standing hindrance to human advancement. The human faculties of perception, judgment, discriminative feeling, mental activity, and even moral preference are exercised only in making a choice. He who does anything because it is the custom makes no choice. Originality is the one thing which unoriginal minds cannot feel the use of. The fatal tendency of mankind to leave off thinking about a thing when it is no longer doubtful is the cause of half their errors. The only way in which a human being can make some approach to knowing the whole of a subject is by hearing what can be said about it by persons of every variety of opinion, and studying all modes in which it can be looked at by every character of mind. So true is that unnatural generally means only uncustomary, and that everything which is usual appears natural. No one can be a great thinker who does not recognize that as a thinker, it is his first duty to follow his intellect to whatever conclusions it may lead. A man who has nothing for which he is willing to fight, nothing which is more important than his own personal safety, is a miserable creature and has no chance of being free unless made and kept so by the exertions of better men than himself. If all mankind minus one were of one opinion, mankind would be no more justified in silencing that one person than he, if he had the power, would be justified in silencing mankind. It is not because men's desires are strong that they act ill, it is because their consciences are weak. There are no means of finding what either one person or many can do, but by trying, and no means by which anyone else can discover for them what it is for their happiness to do or leave undone. That so few now dare to be eccentric marks the chief danger of the time. Bad men need nothing more to compass their ends than that good men should look on and do nothing. It's hardly possible to overstate the value, in the present state of human improvement, of placing human beings in contact with other persons dissimilar to themselves, and with modes of thought and action unlike those with which they are familiar. Such communication has always been one of the primary sources of progress. A person whose desires and impulses are his own, are the expression of his own nature, as it has been developed and modified by his own culture, is said to have a character. One whose desires and impulses are not his own has no character, no more than a steam engine has character. A person may cause evil to others not only by his actions but by his inaction, and in either case he is justly accountable to them for the injury. No wise man ever acquired his wisdom in any mode but this, nor is it in the nature of human intellect to become wise in any other manner. I consider it presumption in anyone to pretend to decide what women are or are not, can or cannot be, by natural constitution. They have always hitherto been kept, as far as regards spontaneous development, in so unnatural a state that their nature cannot but have been greatly distorted and disguised, and no one can safely pronounce that if women's nature were left to choose its direction as freely as men's, and if no artificial bent were attempted to be given to it, except that required by the conditions of human society, and given to both sexes alike, there would be any material difference, or perhaps any difference at all, in the character and capacities which would unfold themselves. It is given to no human being to stereotype a set of truths, and walk safely by their guidance with his mind's eye closed. There is always hope when people are forced to listen to both sides. To tax the larger incomes at a higher percentage than the smaller is to lay a tax on industry and economy, to impose a penalty on people for having worked harder and saved more than their neighbors. How can great minds be produced in a country where the test of great minds is agreeing in the opinion of small minds? Society can and does execute its own mandates, and if it issues wrong mandates instead of right, or any mandates at all in things with it ought not to meddle, it practices a social tyranny more formidable than many kinds of political oppression, since, Though not usually upheld by such extreme penalties, it leaves fewer means of escape, penetrating much more deeply into the details of life and enslaving the soul. Despotism is a legitimate mode of government in dealing with barbarians, provided the end be their improvement. The only purpose for which power can be rightfully exercised over any member of a civilized community against his will is to prevent harm to others. His own good, either physical or moral, is not sufficient warrant. War is an ugly thing, but not the ugliest of things. The decayed and degraded state of moral and patriotic feeling which thinks that nothing is worth war is much worse. The only freedom which deserves the name is that of pursuing our own good in our own way, so long as we do not attempt to deprive others of theirs or impede their efforts to obtain it. To think that because those who wield power in society wield in the end that of government, therefore it is of no use to attempt to influence the constitution of the government by acting on opinion, is to forget that opinion is itself one of the greatest active social forces. One person with a belief is a social power equal to 99 who have only interests.